Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Pro 212 bodybuilder. Today's guest is Jason Hebert. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
For sure. So Jason, we're going to dive right into a couple of questions I like to ask all of my guests just to kind of kickstart the podcast conversation. The first question here, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
So the very first one that I saw was Jay Cutler. I was going through a magazine. This is back in my military days, and I'm sure we'll go over that later on. But I was over at GNC picking up some supplements, some pre-workout, and they sold like the muscle mags on the stands. And I was flipping through it, and I saw Jay Cutler, and he was just like mind-blowing, you know. And so I saw that and I was like, man, yeah, I didn't know anything about competing at all. And I didn't really have any aspirations to compete, but I've been working out for a while, and, I saw that physique. I was like, man, that's actually possible to look like that. And then kind of coming up, I saw Flex Lewis whenever he was competing and whenever he was in the 212. And it was just, he kind of looked similar to what my physique would be. And so I felt like I could kind of relate to that a little bit more than an open bodybuilder, just because I'm smaller. And so I really looked up to Flex Lewis too. And he just has such an awesome shape. And I feel like my strength is conditioning, and he has excellent conditioning as well. And I really wanted to kind of look like that.
Excellent, man. And I think both those guys are kind of the epitome of bodybuilding and business, right? So not only did they have successful careers, but also on the business side of things, they've definitely killed it. So that's awesome, man. Second question here, at what age did you start lifting weights, Jason? And what was the reason why you started lifting weights?
All right. So we'll go back a pretty good bit. The very first time I picked up a weight was back in 2006. So back in 2006, I was actually homeschooled. I had been going to a private school up until then. And whenever I was in sixth grade, I'm sorry, not 2006, when I was in sixth grade. So this was, honestly, I don't even remember that year, but in sixth grade, I was homeschooled after being in a private school for a while. And I was watching, I would sneak around and kind of watch Dragon Ball Z. And so I would, get inspiration from that. And I had these little 5-pound dumbbells in my room, and I would do like dumbbell curls and like bench press and stuff like that. So that's really the first time I started actually like lifting weights. As far as like the first time in the gym, I honestly don't remember exactly when, because I had been in like martial arts growing up. And so I'd always been kind of like around that stuff and working out and doing martial arts. I had my 5-pound dumbbells, so I know that like when I was in high school, I kind of messed around with a little bit, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So I just kind of went from there.
Awesome, man. So we're going to kind of touching on the younger years. I always kind of like to get the backstory, hence the name Behind the Muscle of my guests. So if you don't mind, just touch on a little bit of your childhood, Jason. So where did you grow up? Did you have siblings? You already mentioned martial arts, but were you involved in any other sports? Just kind of paint that picture for us of those younger years, maybe up to high school, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah. So when I was in private school as a really young kid, I like to play soccer. I was really good at it. I was really fast. I really liked running as well. Of course, nowadays running is definitely in the past, but I used to play soccer all the time. I was never really like on a team or anything. And then of course I was in Taekwondo growing up as well. And, I was just always really kind of athletic, just, doing that kind of stuff. And then growing up into high school, I didn't play any sports or anything like that. Every now and then, like on Sundays, I would meet, like after church, I would go out to the soccer fields and I would play like football or rugby, something like that. But I was not really like on an actual team or anything. We would just kind of meet up and just, play around. But so I did that. And then I was actually in the band. I was, for high school, I was a drummer. And I started out playing on the bass drum, basically just how everyone starts out. and just kind of went up from there. I started playing tenors. It's the what they call them quads, so 4 drums. And so I did that for, let's see, my junior year and senior year. And when I was in my senior year, I was actually a captain of the drum line. So no sports background or anything like that. I just kind of played it recreationally.
Any siblings, or just an only child?
I grew up as an only child. I did have a stepsister. It was my stepdad's child, but we never really like grew up together or anything. We didn't live in the same household. Whenever I was growing up, she was already like, out of the house on her own. So we didn't really see each other too much, but we knew who each other were.
Right, right. You mentioned being homeschooled at one point and then going to private school, and then you kind of mentioned church as well. Was the private school and the homeschooling, was that kind of affiliated with the faith that you kind of were taught as a young person, or was it something completely separate?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Growing up, I was in the church all the time. My parents are really strong believers, and so the church that I actually went to on Sundays with my parents, so that's the church that it was actually part school too, and so that was the private school that I went to. And I don't really remember the exact reason why I was homeschooled in the 6th grade. It wasn't anything negative or anything, but because after 6th grade, I actually went back to the private school for 7th. And then that was the highest grade that they taught over there. So after that, I went to public school.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, like in terms of kind of growing up in that kind of that faith environment, did you enjoy that? Was it something that was kind of like pushed on you and you kind of rebelled against it? Because I asked because I kind of grew up in that same setting, right? And you usually kind of see people go two ways. It's like they kind of grow up and kind of continue to follow that, or they kind of rebel, they come back. There's several different paths that I see people take. But what was it like for you? Did you enjoy kind of going to church and being plugged in with youth group and stuff like that, or was it just something that you were kind of made to do?
When I was a little kid, I think I enjoyed it because I got to see all my friends and everything. But as I was getting older and I was like starting to get into high school, and this is whenever I started going to like a public school and everything, and really seeing like what the world was really like, I kind of did start not liking it, because I was basically forced to go. And it wasn't anything to do with like what was happening at the church, because I really did enjoy being there, but it was just the fact that I was being forced to go, and I didn't really have a choice, because I lived under my dad's roof, and those are his rules. You got to do what you got to do. But so after high school, I was ready to get out of the house and everything, and that's whenever I joined the Marine Corps. We'll go into that in a little bit, and I did kind of rebel just a little bit, but I feel like being away from that, while I was gone, I got involved with a church when I was in California in the Marine Corps, and started playing drums for them, and so I kind of got back into it after taking a short hiatus, I guess you could say. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it because of the fact that I was being forced to go.
Right, man. Yeah, that's the story for a lot of people, fortunately or unfortunately. But I just think it's always important. I'm not going to get into any faith talk right now, but I just always think it's important in anything, whether it's faith or career wise. Like at some point, we kind of most of us realize growing up, like, hey, like this is what my parents taught me. This is what the adults that were teachers or coaches taught me. But at some point, we have to kind of figure out things on our own, whether that is faith, whether that's a career, whether that's, relationships. You got to kind of own it for yourself, So I appreciate you touch on that for a minute there, Jason. So you mentioned the Marine Corps. I definitely want to get into that. But in high school, were you kind of thinking about, or did your parents or any adults in your life kind of like, give you some guidance in terms of what they were? Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I got up.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Did your parents or any adults or anybody like that kind of give you any guidance, or were they kind of pushing you in a direction in terms of a career when you're in high school, or were you thinking of anything past the military when you're in high school? Just touch on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I actually didn't have any aspirations to join the military at all. I was honestly thinking about, going to college. I wanted to do some type of construction type stuff, because when I was in high school, I did a building trades class, and I was really good with, like, any type of vertical construction, masonry. I actually got an award for, I forgot what exactly it was, but it was like, building trades, person of the quarter or something like that. And so that was really cool. I was really good at it, just because I was really meticulous about everything. Everything had to be perfect. Um, but I was in band one evening, and this Marine recruiter comes walking into the band hall, and I see this guy walk in. I'm like, that guy is impressive looking. And I mean, he was kind of like a stocky guy too. So, like, I was into working out and stuff. And when I saw him, like, he just looked like super sharp in his uniform, kind of muscular, real stocky. He was short like me. And I was like, man, I think I might be able to do that. And so whenever he was done giving his little speech and everything, I pulled him off to the side and I was like, hey, what do I got to do to get involved with this? And I honestly just wanted to join for the physical challenge. I didn't really know anything about the military. And it's kind of funny because, like, my parents were both military. My dad was Army, my mom was Air Force. And so I don't know. They didn't really talk about it much, and I just thought whenever they would talk about the military, I would think military is just like one thing. I didn't know there were different branches and stuff like that. But yeah, I saw him walk in, and I wanted to be that.
So did you enlist like as a teenager then, and then ship out right after graduation? What did that kind of look like?
Yeah, I actually I signed up, and I was a poolee is what they call them. It's basically like an early stages before you graduate and stuff. This was back in, let's see, I graduated in 2007, so 2006 is whenever I met this guy, and it was like in the fall winter part of the school year, so like right when school first started up. And so I basically kind of just told him that I wanted to be a part of this, and he invited me and a couple other guys in the school to basically train with some of the Marines and some of the other poolies to basically just kind of set yourself up for success whenever you join. And so I did that all the way up until right after high school. And whenever I graduated high school, I had like a set date that I was gonna go off to boot camp. And my recruiter asked me, he's like, "Hey, we've got a slot that's open for 2 weeks prior to your normal date to ship out. Do you want to take it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I don't care." Didn't talk to anybody about it. Didn't talk to my parents. And he's like, "All right, cool." So signed everything, got ready to go, and I kind of sprung it onto my parents last second. I was like, "Hey, by the way, I'm heading out 2 weeks early," and they're like, "Okay," like. So, but yeah, it's just kind of fun that you mentioned that, because right after high school, I jetted right off, and actually my first day in boot camp was like right around 4th of July.
Cool, man. So what was that like? Did you initially sign like a 4-year contract or a 6-year contract? And then what were those experiences like for you, Jason?
Yeah, it was a 4-year contract. So, once you sign, you're locked in. And if you decide you don't want to do this anymore, you get basically, I don't think they do a dishonorable discharge. I think they do like an other than honorable, but it still doesn't look very good for any kind of, resume or anything in the civilian world. So yeah, once you're locked in for that contract, you're in.
So what did so that first 4 years, did you serve that first 4-year contract and then re-up? Just kind of share with us a little bit about the military experience and just kind of the history of it for you.
Yeah, so we did. I did my boot camp and everything, and then right after boot camp, they had another training part. So I wasn't an infantryman or a grunt, is what they call them. I did a combat engineer field. So we had other training. It was can't remember the name of it now, but it was Marine combat training. So it's basically like a play off of infantry training. It's just a different section. But so we had a few weeks of that, and then right after you get finished with the combat training, you go into your actual MOS or your job training. And so that was a pretty long training thing. It was like a few months, and after that, you get sent off to like your actual duty station. And before you leave, you get like a choice of like where you want to go, or they say that you get a choice. And so I actually selected like Japan, somewhere cool, and so I was fully thinking that I was going to get Japan or, something like that. And they sent me to California, which, I mean, it's not too shabby, but it wasn't really what I wanted. And so I was in Camp Pendleton, California for basically my entire enlistment after I was done with all my training.
So then once your 4-year contract was up, did you re-up, or what did that look like?
No, I did my 4 years and I went ahead and got out. While I was in, I did 2 tours overseas. My first one was in Iraq as a combat engineer, and then my second was to Afghanistan, and that was basically it's like convoy security type thing. It was a security unit, so I was basically attached to an infantry unit, and I basically protected the supplies going from one infantry unit to another. But so after I did that, I kind of had it in my mind that I was just going to do my 4 years and get out. And then whenever I got out, I was out for a few months, and then reality hit. It's like, hey, I actually got to do something, so I had to find a job, I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life, kind of thing. And then once my enlistment was up, I didn't have base access anymore, so I couldn't go to the commissary. And that was all kind of new to me, because like as soon as I got out of my parents' household, I mean, I could go to the base and I could just, get things for a lot cheaper than normal. And it was just really convenient. And so I was out for right about a year. And my dad convinced me to join the Air National Guard, because he was actually in the same unit that I'm in right now with the Air National Guard. So but I had it in my mind, active duty Marine, I'm not going to be in the reserves or the Guard or anything like that. It's more of a pride thing. But I'm definitely glad that I did, because the way of life is so good with the Air Force. Now I'm glad that I did the active Marine Corps first and then came over here. But yeah, I definitely don't have any regrets about it.
What would you say, and then we'll kind of transition from the military aspect of your story, but what would you say, just kind of sticking to the 4 years in the Marine Corps, what do you say the Marine Corps gave you, taught you, kind of helped you in terms of just life, even now as a professional bodybuilder?
Definitely discipline. I had discipline coming up as a child. My parents were pretty strict. I had to be home at a certain time. We always ate dinner together at the table. So everything was like, set in place, had a set schedule for everything. So I think that kind of set me up for success when I was in the military. But yeah, as far as like being on my own, like I could do pretty much whatever I wanted. So I think that the Marine Corps kind of like pulled me back and just, kept me disciplined. Pretty much made me feel like I was invincible, because like you have the title Marine, you're like, yeah, I can do anything, but yeah, I think discipline is the main thing, knowing that you can pretty much do anything and you can accomplish it. And no matter how hard it's going to get, like you can always push through it. And I really figured that out when I was in Afghanistan, because it was a whole lot different from Iraq to Afghanistan. It was a lot of things going on over there. And so I figured that out really quick.
Awesome, man. So then in terms of now, still being in the military and then obviously being a professional bodybuilder, is the military side of your life, is that kind of how you pay the bills, and is that kind of like your main career?
No, actually, it was before, because I was active duty. But now being in the Air National Guard, I basically just meet once a month for the weekend. And every year we go out for 2 weeks for our annual training and stuff like that. But yeah, that's just a once a month kind of thing. I'm actually a full-time personal trainer and nutrition coach. So, I take care of athletes as far as like contest prep or, lifestyle, anything like that, anything having to do with nutrition and, competitions and stuff like that. But my main actual job is that and personal training, in-person training.
Cool. So let's get into that then. So, did you continue to strength train in the military? Just touch on that. And then when did you actually really say, you know what, bodybuilding is something that's for me, and I'm going to go for this? Yeah.
So actually, I think whenever I really started taking it serious, and like I said, when I was coming up, I really didn't know what I was doing as far as like actual training or, nutrition and stuff like that. But whenever I really started taking it serious was actually when I was in Iraq. We had a really cool gym. Even though we were doing missions and everything, whenever we were back from our missions, we had access to the gym 24/7 basically. And so there was a couple of guys that were a lot bigger than me. They'd been training for years, and I kind of just like watched them and just kind of learned from them, pick their brain as well. And like I said, that's whenever I started taking it really serious. And it just kind of went from there. That was back in 2009. So yeah, I would say 2008, 2009 is whenever I really started taking it serious.
So then once you were done with the Marine Corps, you said you kind of had that year of just kind of trying to figure things out. Did you go then get your like certification and then step kind of right into the training, or what was it in terms of career post Marine Corps?
Yeah, and like I said before, I didn't really have any aspirations to compete or anything, honestly, because I didn't know anything about it. So whenever I got out of the Marine Corps, I was actually working out at Planet Fitness, and there was some old wrestler guy. He came up to me. He's like, "Hey man," or he's like, "Hey brother," and he was like, "You ever thought about competing in a bodybuilding show?" And I was like, I don't really know anything about it. I don't know what shows are around, And he basically just kind of like tossed out a couple names for different shows that were out there. And I was like, all right, we'll see. But I really didn't take it serious because like I said, I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. Didn't have a coach. It wasn't until I think it was like a year after that, 2013. My cousin actually went to the gym that I was training at, and he met this guy named Christian Simmons. And this guy had just won the Mr. Alabama title. He was actually in Mobile, Alabama, where I live now. And he's like, "Hey man, you got to see this guy. This guy's like jacked and like he's Mr. Alabama. It's really cool." I was like, "All right, whatever." And so I go over to the gym and I meet up with him. And Christian kind of looks at me and he's like, "Have you ever thought about competing?" I was like, "Here we go again." Like, I mean, I would like to, I guess, but I don't know anything about it, And he's like, "Dude, you need to compete. Like, you've got a great physique. I really think you could go pretty far with this." So he's the one that kind of convinced me to start competing, and I actually hired him as my coach to do my first show in 2014.
So what age are we talking about when you hired this gentleman as your first coach?
I was 24, I believe. So that was back in 2013. And then when I was 25, I did my first show in 2014. So he coached me for that show, and I was just going to kind of see like how it would go, and he was telling me that I was going to win the show and everything. I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just trying to figure this stuff out. And then I also figured out that I had to do like an actual routine in front of people. I was like, man, I'm not comfortable with that kind of stuff. Like I'm more of like an introvert type person, And so I actually did my routine. It was whenever I got out there, it was weird because like I was super nervous whenever I was starting to go out on stage. And then whenever I got on stage, it was easy. And it was almost like a calming feeling. And so I really enjoyed it. And, I had a good time up there, and I actually won the overall in that very first show. And so I was like, all right, if I can win the overall in my first show, I guess I'll stick with it. I must be pretty decent at it.
Absolutely, man. I love that stuff. So many people grind for so long to get just like an overall, and then some of you just step right into it. And that's just like, kind of like fate, or however you want to word it. Like, hey, this is probably what I'm supposed to be pursuing, right? Which is really cool too. So just touch on your contest history then. Once you just said your first shows in 2014, you won the overall. What was kind of the next steps in terms of competing? Did you continue to work with that coach, or did you change coaches? Just kind of touch on some of that stuff up to the point when you earned your IFBB pro card.
Yeah. So that show, I was a light heavyweight, believe it or not. I was really conditioned, but like, I feel like I could have been a little bit sharper, but I was just good enough to win. I was nice and full and everything. And the very next show that I did, I think it was like 4 weeks or 5 weeks later. I was another light heavyweight show. I think it was the Mississippi State show. And I actually placed second. in that show. And whenever the lineup was like crazy to me, I was looking at the guy that won, and I was like, how is he not a professional already? But so I placed second in that show, and I was just super ecstatic. You know, I just come from this overall win and then placing second. And I think that was my last show for that year. And then 2015, let's see, they all kind of get like jumbled up a little bit,
Right.
but
I understand.
I did a few shows, a few local shows. I actually, in 2016, I won the title of Mr. Mississippi. And so that was my second overall title. And then all the way up until 2017, because I competed at nationals twice as well. So I think 2015 was my first time that I competed at nationals. So 2016, I competed at nationals again. And then 2017, I competed at USA's. And all of those competitions and the local shows in between, I was coached by Christian Simmons. So I placed third at USA's. Then that was my highest placement in the national shows, because the national shows I placed seventh, then sixth, and then third. So like every year, you know, I got better, placements got better, and I didn't really. Whenever I left Christian Simmons, it wasn't anything that, you know, we were doing wrong, but I had met AJ Sims, and, you know, we started talking and everything. And so I decided to actually go with him, with his coaching. So I hired him in 2017, back in the fall. And I basically hired him for a year. So I was going to do a full off season, 2017 into 2018, to compete at North Americans. And so we did that full off season all the way up until, and I competed at another local shows, the Total Body Championships. I won the overall in that one. I was a light heavyweight in that one as well. And I think I weighed in at like 189. So kind of a smaller light heavyweight. And then 2 weeks after that was North Americans. And I had to compete as a middleweight, just to have better chances. So I had to drop to 176 in 2 weeks. But I was ready for the Total Body Championships. So like, it was a pretty tough time, man. And honestly, don't even know how I made it. That was a pretty crazy story, because my wife right now, she's actually from Australia, and she flew all the way over here. And this was before we really even met each other, because we met each other on Instagram. And she decided she wanted to come see me compete. And so she flew all the way over here just to watch me compete at the Total Body Championships. I was super excited. And then she flew up to Pittsburgh with me to watch me compete in North Americans. And that's where I turned pro. Now, what we didn't know was, whenever you win your class, like, that wasn't it. Like, you had to actually compete in the overall to win your pro card. And not that I'm aware of. I know I didn't know that, and a few other competitors didn't know about that. So like, whenever I won my class, I was like excited, I was like, all right, I got it. And when I went backstage, they took my medal from me, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, what else do I got to do? They're like, oh yeah, you got to compete in the overall for your pro card. I was like, oh man. So I was looking around backstage. I was like, all right, you got like the heavyweights, or the super heavyweights, the heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight. It's like, okay, I think I might be able to get this, because it was top 4. And so eventually I finally got out there and did our pose down and all that kind of stuff, and I won my pro card. But yeah, she flew in from Australia just to watch me compete and watch me turn pro. It was really cool.
That is really cool. So 2017 North Americans is where you earned your IFBB pro status, correct?
Yeah, 2018.
2018. Okay, cool. So 4 years, you started your first show competing in 2014 to 2018. So kind of in that amateur status time frame, Jason, when did you kind of was it after that first show when you got the overall, or when was it when you were like, okay, I'm gonna go all in with this bodybuilder thing? This is something that I truly love and enjoy.
Yeah, it was after that first overall win. Because like I said, I didn't really have any aspirations to compete before. And whenever I felt like, I could actually do well at it, I was like, sure, I'll continue to do it. Whenever I went into that show, I mean, I had the mentality that I wanted to win, obviously, and it's been like that for every show that I've done. But I was pretty realistic with myself. I was like, I don't know who's going to show up to this show, so I'm just going to be the best I can be, and just kind of hope for the best. And turns out, I won the overall, and that boosted my confidence big time, especially since it was my first show, and I was super nervous going out there. And then whenever I got on stage, like I said, everything was just like it's just so easy. It's like I just belonged up there. And so that's really the show that really sold it for me, and I just kept going from there.
When did you start doing the personal training and the coaching stuff then?
I actually started full-time personal training actually last year. This was back in July of 2020. So before all that, whenever I got out of the Marine Corps, I actually worked as a juvenile detention center corrections officer. I did that for a couple of years, and as soon as I was done with that, I was a welder for Ingalls Shipbuilding. I did that for a couple of years, and then right after that, I worked for a company called Muscle Foods, and it was basically like a supplement distribution warehouse, and it was based out of Biloxi, Mississippi, where I was from. And so I did that for a few years. I started that back in 2016 after I won the Mississippi State Show, and so I did that for a few years, and then all this. I actually, let's kind of backtrack just a little bit. So I was working at Muscle Foods, and I've competed a little bit through that. And then 2018, whenever I won my pro card, the next year I was planning on doing my pro debut at the Tampa Pro. But the beginning of the year, the military, the Air National Guard that I'm in now, they told me that I was deploying. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that's going to hang that up for a little bit. So that was one little minor setback. That's probably really the only setback that I've had. But so I deployed later in the year in 2019. I think it was July, August timeframe. And I was there all the way until the beginning of 2020. So as soon as I got back, that's whenever all this the C word, started happening. So I was basically playing catch up all the way from being deployed for 7 months and just kind of getting back into the flow of things. Whenever I got back, I went back to Muscle Foods to work for a little bit, and then they laid me off because none of the gyms were open or anything like that. None of the nutrition stores were open, so they didn't really need any drivers. So I was laid off, and that's whenever I basically was like, I've got to do something about this that I can control, because I'm just tired of working for somebody. And I've had all of this experience with personal training and nutrition and stuff like that, because I had coached a few people for a couple years prior. I didn't charge them or anything like that, but I was basically learning myself. And so I did that, and that was actually really successful. I was honestly glad that I just be part of their success. It motivates me whenever they're really successful. And so I just kind of went from there and started my own personal training business, and started doing full-time coaching as well right after that.
So is your training and coaching and all of that type of stuff, is it fully online, or do you actually meet with clients in person in terms of the actual personal training?
Yeah, so the personal training is actually in person. So I usually do, let's see, I'll count it up real quick. Let's see, it's anywhere between 30 and 40 training sessions a week, and that's in person. And they're usually about an hour, maybe just a little bit over an hour training sessions. And then my coaching business, that's mainly online, but there are a lot of local people that, especially from Mississippi, from where I'm from, because they all know who I am. They've hired me, and whenever they do compete, I actually go to their shows and stuff like that. And I try to go to as many as I can, especially the ones that I have clients that are competing in, so I can be there and make sure everything is going smoothly, make sure their tan is good, they're oiled up and all that kind of stuff. Because I'm a very in-person, type person. But yeah, most of that stuff is online, especially if they're, out of state or anything like that. But my actual training business is in person.
And I love that, because I own a gym, and I'm the only trainer here. It's a small gym, but I personally really value and enjoy kind of that in-person communication, that in-person relationship building, that in-person training. So what is it for you? Because you kind of mentioned earlier that you're kind of more of a quiet to yourself type of an individual, but what is it, Jason, about kind of being in person with another individual, training them, that you do appreciate, you do value, that you do actually enjoy?
Yeah, so that's one thing that I had to really adapt to whenever I started my own business, because whenever I was driving the truck for the supplement company, you know, I would load up all the stuff and then just kind of say hey, and then drop it off and get them to sign something, and I was right out the door. So yeah, I had to really kind of branch out and become more social whenever I started my personal training business. And honestly, I really enjoy it because like inside, like I am a people person, but it doesn't really like reflect that way. So like when I walk into the gym, usually I walk into the gym, you know, I'm focused, like, you know, everything is like, you know, set. I don't really have time to talk or anything like that. But you obviously can't be like that when you go into a personal training studio and you're training, you know, 30 clients. So I had to really kind of like change my mindset with that kind of thing and really express that, you know, I really am this way. I'm not like this like person that's going to bite your head off whenever I walk into the gym. And honestly, it's really cool just seeing people's expression, like whenever they come into the gym and then they see me and they know that I'm their trainer, they get like, you know, kind of excited, you know, because like they're usually, whenever you come in for someone to torture you in the gym, like that doesn't sound very exciting. But whenever they're actually seeing results and you know, have good conversation in between sets and everything, and become more personable with your clients, that's something that's really cool to me. And I really like having like a personal relationship with my clients, especially the in-person ones.
Absolutely, man. I'm right with you. All right, let's talk about being an IFBB pro bodybuilder. So when was your pro debut? And just touch on your pro competition history, if you don't mind.
My pro debut is back in 2020, which is kind of crazy because that year was probably the most successful year that I've had in my life. And, you know, for a lot of people, that wasn't the case, you know, with everything going on. You know, I started my personal training business. I bought a house, you know, I bought a new vehicle, and basically just kind of like moved my life from Mississippi over to Alabama. And so anyway, fast forward, my pro debut was in the Chicago Pro in October last year. And of course, it was held in Atlanta. So I was able to just drive over there. It was like a 4.5, 5 hour drive for me. So I had planned to do the Puerto Rico Pro earlier, and that one actually got canceled. And then I was planning on doing the New York Pro after that. But for some reason, I was thinking that my drill weekend was that weekend. But I guess for some reason they changed it. So I had already had it set in my mind that I wasn't going to be able to do the New York Pro because I, you know, drill that weekend. I found out a week prior that they had moved the drill to the next weekend. I was like, man, I could have done that show, but it was too late. And so the very last show that I possibly could have done was the Chicago Pro because it was pushed a little bit later. And then, you know, with it being driving distance away, it was really convenient for me. So I just drove over there. That was my pro debut, and I actually placed fourth in my pro debut. The whole goal was to place top 5, and like it was a goal, so like I was really kind of like hoping that I would get top 5 because like I knew what I was going up against, and especially playing catch up from the deployment and then not having like a real gym access half the year. You know, I did what I had to do. I, you know, worked out in a little warehouse with a buddy of mine's, like little free weights and stuff like that. So I made do with what I could, but I knew I was playing catch up, and I knew all these other pro athletes had like, you know, private gym access and stuff like that. So I stayed pretty realistic and just kind of hoping for a top 5. Whenever I placed fourth, man, I was so excited, especially with, you know, the people that I was competing with. It was just really, really cool.
Who won that show? I can't remember.
Keon Pearson.
That's what I thought. Yeah, yeah.
He won that show.
Yeah, go ahead. Who is first, second, third? Who are the 3 guys ahead of you?
Yeah, Austin Carr was actually second in that show. And then Noel Adame, I don't know if you know who that is. He's just like a freak of a person. I mean, he's got so much muscle tissue, it's just crazy. He actually placed third in that one, and then I placed right under them. So, just being compared to those guys, those, I mean, elite competitors, and then actually belonging on that stage, it felt really good. Because I always kind of looked at myself as kind of like a smaller guy, and I knew my strength was conditioning, and so I think that's what kind of made me stick out just a little bit. But it was really cool being compared to the top guys and actually belonging on that stage.
What was it like? I mean, I've asked several IFBB pros this question because, you look at not necessarily anymore the magazines, but, you get on Instagram, you scroll and you see all these pros and you just see all these people, kind of the highlights and everything. You're like, man, like this is so cool. And then, dude, what was it like? I mean, making your pro debut, seeing all these guys on Instagram and, all these, big names like Keon, I mean, just a freak, just so legit. And then actually being on the same stage with them, was it really surreal, or are you a pretty even keel guy and it's just kind of just another day at the office?
I thought it would be a pretty surreal moment. And whenever I got backstage, I did kind of like look around just a little bit, but I try to stay focused because I learned that coming up whenever I was competing is like, you just don't pay attention to anyone else around you. Just focus on what you got to do and you'll be fine. You're going to be the best you can be. So that's the only thing that you have in control of. So like, I thought it would be like a pretty surreal moment, but I really just didn't pay attention to what was going on around. Well, like I said, I did look around a little bit. I was like, man, like these guys are huge. Like, what am I doing here? But then I'm just like, all right, just focus. You're the best you can possibly be. You're definitely better than your last showing. So we'll just kind of see where you land. And so yeah, that's what happened with that.
Now, is that kind of the mindset? I hear a lot of pros talk about that kind of that mindset that you just mentioned about like, hey, it's not really about looking at this person or that person and comparing yourself. It's really just trying to continue to improve your physique and just staying focused on you. Is that really kind of your mentality and just kind of the way that you live that bodybuilding life?
Absolutely. That's the only thing that you're in control of. You're only in control of your progression, like how you look on stage that day, your conditioning, presentation, and all that revolves around you. So, I mean, you can't control what anyone else is going to look like, what the judges are going to think. As long as you're the best you can possibly be, I mean, that's really it. So if you have that kind of mindset, I mean, I don't really see how you can fail. I mean, maybe the placement might not be as high just because there are other freaks out there, and like I said, you can't really control that. But as long as you keep progressing and you're the best you can be, and you don't leave any stone unturned as far as like presentation, conditioning, like I said, progression, then I mean that's all you can do.
So what is you made your pro debut last year? Was that the only competition you competed in 2020 then?
Yeah, that was the very last one that I could have competed in. Like I said, I had planned to do a couple other ones before, but they fell through. And so, yeah, that was the very last one that I could do.
So 2021, I know you just competed here not too long ago. What was the plan going into 2021? And then how has that plan gone and unfolded up to this point?
Yeah, like I said, the plan was just to be better. And I definitely proved that. I competed in the Chicago Pro again this year, and I ended up placing sixth. The lineup was a little bit stronger this year, just because I feel like there were more athletes that were able to compete this year, and so it was really cool to still be in the first call out, be compared with the top guys. And man, those top guys, I don't think any of them are not going to the Olympia. Pretty sure. So that's a really cool thing. The top five in that class, I'm pretty sure they're all going, and so to still be in that lineup is just really cool. 2 weeks after that, I competed in the Tampa Pro. Now, that one was a little bit confusing for me. I'm not exactly sure what happened with that one, because from the Chicago Pro, I was really good. I was definitely better than the year prior. But for the Tampa Pro, I was spot on. Like I was easily 10% better, or 10 times better, as far as like my conditioning, presentation, color. I mean, everything was just way better. And I don't feel like, not taking away from anything from the other competitors or anything, but the ones that I beat in Chicago, I don't feel were that much better in Tampa. But it was almost like they just destroyed me in Tampa. I ended up placing 12th. And so whenever I didn't make that first call out, I was just kind of like looking around like what happened, And I know the lighting was really bad, and it's not just me saying that. I've heard that from pretty much every competitor that was there. Even with the looking at the open class, whenever Ian won the open, I mean, he looked like he was out of shape in the pictures, but like I was there in person and I saw like the graininess of his skin, so I knew he wasn't. And so that kind of helped me with my mindset and everything. But yeah, I was just a little confused about that one. And a week after that, I competed at Dallas, and I placed fourth again for another pro show. So coming from 6th and then 12th and then back up to 4th, it was definitely refreshing, to kind of end my my competition season with a higher placement like that, because that 12th placement, it really hit me hard. And I tried not to let it affect me, but whenever you're expecting to go in and do really well, especially whenever you made the improvements that you needed to make and everything was just better, it was like a stab, but it was really cool going to Dallas and competing in the Texas Pro and placing fourth. And that show was ran so awesome too. Of course, the lighting was really good too, but like everything about that show was just a really great experience.
So what is, you just mentioned that that's going to be your last show of 2021. And I know that your mindset has just continued to improve, but in terms of going forward, do you have that goal of stepping on the Olympia stage? And if so, is that something you would like to accomplish next year? Do you kind of have a 2-year game plan? What does that progression look like for you in terms of, pursuing that Olympia qualification?
Honestly, that was the goal this year. So falling short from, accumulating the points that I needed to be qualified for the Olympia, it's unfortunate, but, next year is another year. I'm not exactly sure when my next show will be, just because I know that I need time to actually grow and to be really competitive in the class. 4th place, especially 2 4th placements in my pro shows. I mean, that's obviously not like terrible or anything like that, but we all compete to win. And I feel like in order for me to actually be in the running to actually win those shows, I feel like I need to put on a lot more size. And I weighed in for this last show, I weighed in about, I think it was 140 or 140, 194 and a half, 195, somewhere around there. So I've got plenty of room for growth, and I don't have to worry about, the 212 weight cap or anything like that. So I really think I should just focus on really just trying to put on as much muscle tissue as I can. So I'm not sure what the next show will be. If it is next year, it'll be later on in the year. If not next year, it'll definitely be in 2023.
Is AJ Sims then still your coach?
Yes, definitely. Honestly, I don't think I would ever have anyone else coach me. Until he stops coaching, which hopefully he doesn't do that. I don't see myself going anywhere. He's an awesome guy, and he's an incredible coach. But not only that, he's just an awesome person too. He's very personable. His attention to detail is just ridiculous. Like the team that's involved with him, the Cement Boys, what we call each other, we don't even think he's human. Like he's just like he's that good. He's just a really genuine person, an awesome coach, and he just knows exactly what to do, when to do it, and it's really cool. So he's actually
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He's actually taking charge of my my off season as well this time, and so we're going to do a full off season into next year. I'm sure there will be some like mini cuts in between just to kind of keep the body composition where it needs to be, but I know enough about nutrition and everything, obviously, because I have my coaching business as well. But I feel like that extra push whenever I feel like maybe I'm getting a little bit softer than I need to be, but he's like, no, you're good to go. We'll just keep pushing. And then he's he's brilliant when it comes to that kind of stuff. So he knows when to kind of pull back and when to push. And every time I look at myself, that's why I don't coach myself, because I mean, I would run myself into the ground, you know. I would never be like my best when I get on stage. So I kind of feel like he's kind of like holding the reins and just like, you know, keeping me progressing. So we'll do a full progression season and to a contest prep whenever that is.
Awesome. Yeah, I was actually just I just reached out to AJ just on Instagram, kind of like I do with most of you athletes and coaches. I was chatting with him just really quick today, asked him if he'd be on the podcast, and just a quick little interaction. I mean, he was like, yeah, man. He's like, I'd be down. And like you said, it seems like a really genuine individual. And I think that's something that is overlooked within training and coaching within the fitness industry. Kind of like what you touched on earlier, Jason, you know, really, it's not necessarily the nuts and bolts of training and nutrition. Like that stuff, it's important, but it's more about building relationships and just, you know, really listening to people and giving them an opportunity to open up and kind of like, you know, connect with you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, obviously the training and nutrition is super important. But, you know, if you don't have a coach that you can relate to, I mean, I don't really see how you're going to progress, you know, in any way. You have to have, and, you know, AJ might not be the right coach for some other people. You have to find that right fit for the person. You know, I feel like, you know, I know enough to really coach people and really get them to present their physiques as best as they can. But sometimes that relationship doesn't click with certain people. And I feel like that's a very important thing whenever it comes to hiring a coach.
100%. So speaking on training specifically, and we'll kind of wrap things up here in a few minutes, but what is just the general training philosophy look like for you? And then now that you're connected with AJ and kind of going into a full-blown off season, are you going to be making any adjustments, or is he making any adjustments to that training that you've kind of always done or stuck to?
As far as weight training, I pretty much do my own weight training. He does everything as far as like supplementation, nutrition, stuff like that. So he knows when to kind of, you know, push and then pull back on those kind of things. As far as my training, I don't train like well, I don't want to say like a typical bodybuilder, but like I feel like so many people are so set on the progressive overload style training. And I've always said that, well, not always, but the past few years, I've said that I feel like, you know, strength should just be a side effect of what your training is. So, you know, the judges aren't seeing what you're bench pressing or what you're squatting or anything like. They're not looking at how much weight you're moving. And, you know, I feel like, you know, you're going to get stronger whenever you train, but I don't feel like you have to like every single week push another 5 pounds, push another 5 pounds. As long as you're stimulating the muscle and, you know, pushing all the way to failure, you're creating that stimulus for growth. And as long as you're getting, you know, the proper nutrition, supplementation, rest, I mean, you're going to progress no matter what. So I really don't feel like, you know, that should be like the be all end all of what your training should be.
So are you then, when you're training, your specific training for yourself, is that kind of like more, are we talking kind of like more volume, just higher reps, more sets, or what is the actual nuts and bolts look like with your training when you're in the gym?
Yeah, my training is actually relatively low volume. What I usually do, so like a typical set, if you want to call it, I'll usually do like a couple of like feeler sets or like a warm up set. Usually about 1 or 2 of those, and then I'll start getting to my working sets, and really just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. So like if I need a couple more warm up sets, then I'll do them. But I don't do anything in those first sets to really fatigue the muscle. I'm just, you know, trying to feel the movement, try to get, you know, ready for my heavy sets. Now I try not to put like a certain rep range on it. I do like to keep it anywhere, you know, between like 7 and 12, somewhere around there. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like those numbers, because if you set a number on it, then you're going to hit 10 reps, you know, say if that's your goal is to do 10 reps. If you hit 10 reps, then you're going to stop there. And when you really probably could have done 13. But I try to choose a weight that, you know, I can get that rep range in. But what I'll do for my first working set is I'll go all the way to failure. Usually it's like in that rep range between 7 and 12, somewhere around there. The next one, because I'll usually do 2 of those really hard working sets after my warm-up sets. The next one will probably be, it'll go all the way to failure like that, but I'll usually do like some sort of like a rest pause type set, or maybe like a drop set or something. So I'll add a little bit more volume to that last one and still using the same heavy weight. But yeah, that's kind of how like my typical sets go.
Cool, man. What does recovery look like for you? Is there tissue work done, chiropractic work? I mean, I know sleep's important and kind of that stuff we all know, but anything beyond just kind of the normal typical sleep and proper nutrition, what does that look like in terms of recovery for you, Jason?
Honestly, I probably should be a lot more proactive when it comes to that, because I mean, I work at a personal training studio where, everyone from every career field is there, including massage therapists, anything like that, physical therapists. So like, I know those people, and I really don't have any excuse why I don't get tissue work done. But, I haven't had it done probably in a couple months, honestly. So I feel like that's something that can definitely be implemented, and it's will definitely help with my recovery as well. But in the off season, I usually take about 2 days of rest, and the way I have my training split set up, it actually works out pretty well to where I'm pretty well recovered for the next time I have to work that next the muscle tissue again. Now I could benefit from getting massage work, therapy, and stuff like that, but the way my nutrition is set up and training split is, it works out to my advantage.
Excellent. Something I saw on your Instagram that I wanted to ask you about, the statement, it says your reactions determine your reality. Can you break that down for me a little bit?
Yeah, so that's something that I've told myself pretty much every morning for years. And it's basically just saying like, you're in control of how your day is, basically. So let's just say something, I don't want to say necessarily bad, but something that you don't really expect to happen, or something that you're not too fond of happens. And it'll kind of like set your mood to not be what it should be for the day. You have control over that. So if you let that bother you, then it's going to ruin the rest of your day or even the week. So I feel like if you remind yourself that every morning, you're going to set yourself up for success for that day. And, you're not going to let little things get to you. Like, people say rude comments, or let's just say like comments on Instagram. Like, I get blown up on Instagram all the time about like form and stuff like that. Whenever like, I feel like my form is pretty good. My profession is personal training and nutrition coach. So I feel like I have a firm grasp of what that is. And also, my physique, displays that as well. Every year I progress. So, but anyway, I feel like if you just kind of repeat that stuff to you, you set yourself up for success for that day.
Love it, man. What's some advice, or maybe just some insight that you would be able to give or want to share with some of the younger listeners? I know we're exposed to so much now, specifically because of Instagram, and there's so much information out there for you. Being a young athlete, being still a young pro, just kind of starting your career, with all of your experiences, what would you share? What's some of your advice, Jason, for some of the younger listeners, maybe just getting into bodybuilding, thinking about competing for the first time, kind of some of those novice people out there?
Yeah, so there's a couple things actually. Whenever you go to hire a coach, make sure you do your research on like their background, get to know them just a little bit, and actually kind of like look at basically their resume. What do their athletes look like? Talk to their athletes whenever they're being coached by them, and kind of get like real feedback from them. Also, do your own research on actually competing, and actually have some sort of knowledge on what you have to do, instead of like being completely fresh, not knowing anything about anything, and be like, hey, I want to compete, because you haven't really done anything to progress yourself and to get ready for that. And let's see what else. What was the rest of that question?
Just kind of speaking speaking to some of the novice listeners, or some of the younger people that are thinking about getting into bodybuilding or thinking about competing for the first time.
Oh yeah. And so like once you do hire a coach, I would just follow the plan. Now that doesn't mean not to ask questions because, I'm a very big advocate of that. If you don't understand something, there's not a stupid question. So always ask those questions, but also do your own research too. So like if you can figure out the answer on your own, and it's really not that complicated, like, have and put some effort towards it. Don't just be like, hey, like, what is uh what is 50 grams of rice equal in carbs? Like, like you can figure that out on Google. You don't have to have a coach that tell you that kind of thing.
Right. That's good, man. Sometimes, it's just like working with people, you're like, are you serious right now? But they usually are, just got to kind of go with the flow. What's kind of the, I don't know if you are this type of an individual or not, but outside of, qualifying for the Olympia, continuing to progress as an athlete, as a professional bodybuilder, are there any goals, or is there a vision or anything outside of the bodybuilding world that you and your wife are kind of pursuing in terms of maybe business or just things after bodybuilding is over?
Well, after bodybuilding is over, I still got a long time in this. I'm only 32, so I've got a little bit of time on my side. Obviously the goal is to be on the Olympia stage and be competitive in that part of the bodybuilding. So it's kind of hard to say like what the plans are for afterwards, just because I have so much longer in this, and I have I don't have I don't have to worry about my weight cap and everything with the 212 because I have so much room to grow. Obviously, retirement later on, after bodybuilding, I'm still going to be coaching and personal training and stuff like that. But I'll have retirement with the military, so I'm always going to have that. My wife is actually a firefighter for Mobile. She started whenever we moved over here, and she's doing extremely well with that, and she just absolutely loves her job. And it takes a special person to do that kind of thing. With firefighting, military, anything like that, it takes a really special person because it's not for everybody. But she's killing it and loves it, so she's got that set up for her. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of hard to really kind of envision like after bodybuilding right now, just because I am so fresh with it right now.
Right. Got that tunnel vision, right? And that's what you have to have in any aspect of life. If you want to be great, you got to have that tunnel vision, got to have the blinders on and keep moving forward. So we're going to just wrap it up here. Jason, are there any kind of final words or anything that you would like to leave with the listeners before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for having me on the podcast. I really enjoy this type of thing. My very first interview type thing was with Gasp, and that was actually this year. So I actually just started doing like interviews and stuff like that. But that was another thing I wanted to say. Just want to give a shout out to Gasp. They've taken so much good care of me coming up, and also Long Life Meal Prep. They ship all my meats to me for the week, and they've been absolutely phenomenal ever since before Chicago Pro last year. They've been on point with everything. And then Like a Pro Supplements is the supplement company I'm with. They're just awesome. If you look at the formulas in that supplement company, I mean, you're not going to find anything better. And people are going to say like, oh, you're just saying that because you're sponsored by them. I've been using their products for years before I was even sponsored by them. And I truly believe in that brand as well as any brand that I'm associated with. And they're definitely the real deal. So just want to give a shout out to those companies, and thanks again for having me on. It was awesome.
For sure. And the Like a Pro Supplements, that's created and owned by IFBB Pro Jeff Long. That's correct, right?
Correct. Yep.
Cool.
And he's a family-owned business. Him, his wife, and his son run that whole thing, and they're just great people.
For sure. Yeah, I remember back in the day, you want to talk about a freak, man. Jeff was definitely a freak. So it's always cool to see somebody that has that bodybuilding background then kind of branch out into the supplements, because for the most part, you know that there's going to be some sort of understanding of what an athlete, a bodybuilder specifically would need and want. So super cool that Jeff has transitioned to that. And you're very welcome, Jason. I want to thank you. I'm always very thankful for all of you athletes and top level coaches that take some time to chop it up with me on the podcast. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, Glenn. I appreciate it.
Cool. So listeners, I just want to once again thank you for listening, tuning in to Behind the Muscle podcast. I always appreciate you guys checking out the podcast. One favor, I would just ask of all of you, take this episode with Jason and make sure you share it on all of your social media platforms. That's how more people find the podcast, more people listen, more people are positively impacted by the stories that are behind the muscle. And then one other thing, if you guys would just subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be cool. And I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.